We all talk about the light. We celebrate the awakened ones, the healed ones, the radiant, peaceful, loving beings who seem to walk on clouds of wisdom and speak in enlightened metaphors. But what if I told you the light is only half the truth? What if I told you the very thing we've been taught to suppress, avoid, or fear, our shadow, our rage, our intensity, our darkness, is actually the source of our greatest spiritual power? That the chosen ones, the true ones, the ones marked by divine purpose, are chosen not in spite of their darkness, but because of it. You see, when we talk about chosen ones, we imagine saints humble, kind, endlessly patient. But the real chosen ones are forged in something far more raw. They are not born in the light. They are dragged through darkness, through trauma, through betrayal, through abandonment, through inner chaos so deep it nearly breaks them. They aren't chosen because they've mastered peace. They're chosen because they've survived hell and didn't lose their soul along the way. I need you to really feel this. Your darkness is not a mistake. Your darkness is not a flaw. Your darkness is your initiation, the rage you carry, the pain you hide, the fire inside you that you've been afraid of because others told you it was too much. That is holy. That is sacred. That is the forbidden flame. And only those who have walked through the underworld of their own psyche can carry it without being consumed by it. Let me ask you something. What if your deepest wounds weren't meant to weaken you, but to awaken you? What if your shame was actually the map to your power? What if your intensity, your darkness, your shadow wasn't the obstacle, but the key? Most people will never understand what it means to be chosen. They think it's about being special. But it's not about being better, it's about being built differently. You feel everything more. You see through people. You sense what others ignore. And you carry weight most can't even comprehend. That's not random. That's not punishment. That's design. But here's the twist. The more power you carry, the more darkness you must confront. Not because the darkness is evil, but because it is unintegrated. The shadow is not your enemy. The shadow is the part of you that was exiled, rejected, silenced. And until you bring it home, you will never be whole. You will never be powerful. You will only be pretending performing light while denying the truth of your full being. True power comes from integration, from being able to hold both the light and the dark, from standing in your truth, even when it's messy, even when it's fierce, even when it scares people. Because real spiritual maturity isn't about being nice. It's about being real. It's about having the capacity to walk into any room, any situation, any energetic hell and stay rooted in your presence. Not because you've escaped the dark, but because you've mastered it. I've seen this firsthand. I've sat in silence with monks who radiate peace, and I've sat with warriors who faced death and still carry light in their eyes. Do you know what they have in common? They've both made peace with their darkness. They've stopped running. They've stopped apologizing. They've stopped shrinking to make others comfortable. They've owned every part of their soul, and that ownership becomes a kind of electricity you can feel when they enter the room. But the world doesn't teach us this. The world teaches us to sanitize ourselves, to be palatable, to be pleasing. It teaches us to present a curated version of ourselves while hiding the parts that make us powerful. Because powerful people are hard to control, and chosen ones who have integrated their darkness, they can't be manipulated. They can't be tamed. They become dangerous not in a destructive way, but in a way that threatens every illusion, every lie, every system built on fear. And that's exactly why your dark side is your greatest power. Because it is the part of you that refuses to be fake. It's the part of you that says no when everyone else is saying yes. It's the part of you that knows when something is off, even when it looks good on paper. It's the part of you that has survived what should have destroyed you and still has the audacity to shine. So let me ask you again, but deeper this time. What if the part of you that you've been hiding is the part of you that was meant to lead? What if your anger has a message? What if your grief is carrying codes? What if your darkness has been waiting, not to destroy you, but to empower you? This is where the real journey begins. Not with denying your shadow, but with turning toward it. Not with trying to fix it, but with listening to it, sitting with it, honoring it. Because when you do, you unlock something ancient, something primal, something that no ceremony, no book, no guru can give you. You unlock the part of you that remembers. And that memory? Ta remembrance. That's where true power lives.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
We've all been told to be the light, but no one ever tells you what to do when the light goes out inside of you. What to do when your thoughts turn into battlegrounds, when your heart feels like a war zone, and when the very thing you're supposed to heal starts to fight back. The truth is, every chosen one will eventually meet their demon. Not some external force, not some monster in the shadows, but the inner force that has been silently shaping your life from behind the curtain, the shadow self, the wounded self, the part of you that you've buried so deeply you forgot it was even alive. But it is. And it's not just alive, it's awake. And when you finally turn toward it, you don't just find darkness, you find fire. The demon within isn't evil, it's exiled. It's the part of you that was told it wasn't acceptable, the rage that had no voice, the grief that had no witness, the power that had no permission. And so it grew in silence, in shame, in secrecy. But the truth is, your demon is not your enemy, it's your unclaimed power. It's the part of you that remembers every time you were betrayed, every time you were silenced, every time you were overlooked, underestimated, or abandoned. And now, it roars, not to destroy you, but to wake you up. Facing the demon within is the rite of passage every chosen one must walk. It's not optional. You can't transcend what you refuse to confront. You can't fake your way into wholeness. You have to go through the shadow. You have to sit in the fire. And when you do, when you stop running, stop numbing, stop pretending, you begin to hear it speak. You begin to realize that your fear isn't just fear. It's a message. Your anger isn't just chaos, it's a compass. Your darkness isn't just pain, it's potential. This is where the warrior spirit is born. Not in temples, not in meditation retreats, but in the raw, unfiltered moments when you face your own darkness and choose to stay. When you scream into the void and still choose to trust. When you fall apart and still choose to rise. That's when the warrior in you awakens, not as someone who fights others, but as someone who refuses to abandon themselves. You begin to reclaim pieces of yourself you didn't even know you had lost. The voice you silenced as a child, the fire you dimmed to fit in, the instincts you denied to be accepted. You begin to take them back, slowly, fiercely, tenderly. And with every piece you reclaim, you become more you. Not the version of you the world wanted, not the filtered version, but the real you, the one who knows how to stand alone, how to speak truth even when your voice shakes, how to hold space for your own pain without needing to be rescued. And here's the paradox. The more you integrate your shadow, the more peaceful you become. Not passive, not performative, but deeply, unshakably grounded. Because now there's no inner war. There's no part of you you're hiding from. You've met your demon. You've made peace with it. And now it works with you, not against you. You carry a different energy after that. People feel it. You don't even have to speak. You walk into a room and the air shifts. Not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because your presence is no longer divided. You are whole. And wholeness is magnetic. Wholeness is power. But most people will never get here. Why? Because facing your demon takes courage. It takes brutal honesty. It takes sitting with emotions that feel like they might drown you, and no one can do it for you. Not your healer, not your guru, not even your higher self. You have to choose to walk into that cave. You have to choose to sit in the dark. You have to choose to see yourself fully, no filters, no edits, no masks. So let me ask you, what are you still running from inside yourself? What part of you are you still afraid to face? Because that part, the one you've labeled too much, too broken, too dark, that's where your raw power lies. That's where the warrior waits. Not to fight the world, but to unleash you. There comes a moment on the path of every chosen one when pain stops being random, when suffering stops feeling like punishment, when the chaos starts to form a pattern. It's subtle at first, like a whisper behind the noise, but eventually you begin to see it. Every wound you've ever carried wasn't just something to endure. It was something to decode, something to sharpen. This is where the real transformation begins. When you realize that your pain is not just for healing, it is for forging. It is for making you precise, focused, unshakable. This is what shadow work does. It takes your brokenness, your confusion, your rage, and it doesn't just soothe it. It weaponizes it. Not in a violent way, but in a way that cuts through illusion, through fear, through lies. And that weapon is truth. Once you've faced your shadow, you start to speak differently. You stop sugarcoating. You stop pretending. You stop saying what's expected and start speaking what's real. Because you've seen too much, you felt too deeply, and you can no longer participate in the games. You become allergic to fakeness. You become deeply sensitive to energy. You feel when someone is out of alignment before they even open their mouth. You read between the lines. You hear what isn't being said. And you know instantly when someone is lying to themselves. That's the gift of shadow work. It doesn't just heal you, it hones you. And that honing makes you dangerous to the systems built on illusion. It makes you a mirror to people who aren't ready to face themselves. It makes you magnetic to those who are. Because truth is a frequency. And once you carry it, you don't need to convince anyone. You just are. And people either rise to meet you or they run. But here's the thing. Shadow work is not about being brutal. It's about being clear. It's about learning how to speak from your core, not your conditioning. To act from alignment, not approval. To move with purpose, not performance. And that clarity becomes your compass. It becomes the way you cut through distractions, through false paths, through relationships that drain you. You stop leaking energy trying to be liked. You stop bending yourself to avoid conflict. You stop betraying yourself to keep the peace. Because now, you are the peace. And anything that costs you your truth is too expensive. Let me ask you something that might shift your entire life. Where in your life are you still lying to yourself just to be accepted? Because that lie, that's the leak. That's the crack in your energy field. That's the place where your power is bleeding out. And the only way to seal it is with truth. Not the kind of truth that's palatable, the kind that's real, the kind that might shake your world for a moment but will liberate you forever. You see, the chosen ones are not chosen because they're perfect. They're chosen because they're willing to suffer, willing to be alone, willing to walk away from everything that isn't aligned, willing to face their own darkness and not flinch. And that willingness becomes their weapon. Because while others are still trying to avoid discomfort, the chosen ones have learned how to wield it. They've learned how to turn pain into purpose, how to turn shame into sovereignty, how to turn silence into sacred speech. And this is the level few people reach. Because it requires you to stop outsourcing your clarity. It requires you to stop searching for validation. It requires you to sit with yourself until the noise dies down and the truth emerges, not the truth you were taught, but the truth that rises from your bones. When you reach this level, everything changes. Your relationships evolve. Your decisions become sharper. Your path becomes clearer. Not because life gets easier, but because you get clearer. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop doubting and start deciding. You stop existing on autopilot and start living like every step is sacred. And the most beautiful part, you no longer need to force anything. Because when your energy is aligned, your presence does the work. Your truth does the work. You don't have to chase your purpose. You embody it. And that embodiment is what makes you powerful, not loud, not flashy, precise, focused, intentional. And that level of clarity, it cuts like a blade, a sacred blade, a weapon of truth. There is something terrifying to the world about a person who has embraced their darkness. Not the kind of darkness that seeks to harm or dominate, but the kind that has been purified through fire, through solitude, through brutal self-honesty. A chosen one who has walked through their own inferno and emerged not as a victim, not as a savior, but as a sovereign being. This kind of person is ungovernable, uncontainable, and often deeply feared. Why? Because they don't need permission to exist. They no longer ask the world for validation. They no longer bow to systems of approval or apology. They have faced the parts of themselves that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. And in doing so, they've reclaimed something that society tries desperately to suppress: raw, untamed spiritual authority. You see, the world loves a chosen one who shines with light and speaks of love and unity. That version is easy to digest, easy to place on a pedestal, easy to control. But the moment that same individual starts speaking uncomfortable truths, starts disrupting the status quo, starts embodying their full range of power, including their shadow, the energy shifts. Suddenly, they're not just a light worker. They're a sacred rebel, a system breaker, a mirror that reflects not just what's beautiful, but what's buried. And this is where the real test begins. Because once you awaken to your power, the world will try to tame you. It will try to soften your edges. It will try to lure you back into roles that feel safe: healer, helper, peacekeeper. But the sacred rebel in you knows that peace without truth is just performance. That harmony at the cost of integrity is spiritual betrayal. And so you begin to speak not to please, but to provoke evolution. You begin to live not to fit in, but to set others free by example. But make no mistake, this path is not for the faint of heart. You will be misunderstood. You will be judged. You will be mischaracterized by those who can only see in black and white. Because when you live in your fullness, when you walk in both light and shadow, you become inconvenient. You don't fit neatly into spiritual boxes. You don't follow the rules. You listen to your soul above all else. And that kind of freedom? It terrifies those who are still enslaved to image, to comfort, to belonging. Let me ask you something only your soul can answer. Are you willing to be feared in order to be free? Because that's the final threshold. Not just to integrate your darkness, but to embody it unapologetically. To stop hiding your fire. To stop dimming your truth. To stop sanitizing your soul just to make others comfortable. The sacred rebel doesn't burn things down for the thrill of destruction. They burn illusions. They burn falsehoods. They burn what is no longer aligned so that something real can rise from the ashes. And when you live this way, you become a living transmission. Your very existence becomes a challenge to the false self, to the conditioned self, to every system built on fear. You don't have to preach. You don't have to convert. You simply be, and your being becomes the medicine, or the mirror, or the match that lights someone else's awakening. So yes, the dark side of the chosen one is their greatest power, not because it makes them dangerous to others, but because it makes them dangerous to the lie that we must be perfect, the lie that we must be pleasing, the lie that we must suppress half of who we are to be spiritual. The chosen ones who embrace their darkness carry a deeper kind of light, one that doesn't blind, but illuminates truth without flinching. This is the paradox the world struggles to understand. That your darkness is not in conflict with your divinity. It is part of it. It is what sharpens your intuition, deepens your empathy, clarifies your purpose. It is what makes your light real, not fake, not filtered, not fragile, but forged, fierce, and free. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be remembered by the ones who are ready, the ones who recognize the fire in your eyes because it lives in them too. And when they see you fully standing in both your shadow and your light, They are reminded that they can too. That is your gift. That is your rebellion. That is your power. And that is why the world fears you, but needs you more than ever.